p.m. It's April 8th, Wednesday, and we've got a couple things on the agenda. Discussion of the use of tele and video conferencing for official meetings and testing of the virtual public meeting. So we'll get it started here. This is the second time we've had a work session like this. We've experimented a little bit with Zoom before. This time we're using a webinar version, which has some slight changes, which I presume somebody can tell us about.
All right, so we are live at this point. We are recording this meeting, and we at this point have, as near as I can tell, nobody from the general public in attendance.
So Rob, we do have a few people under attendees.
Okay.
And so the attendees that you see, the council should see on the participants list on the bottom of your screen. I think you looked at this before. The bottom of your screen should say participants. And if you click on it, it pops up to the right and you have either panelists, which are the people in the meeting, or attendees, which usually are the public, the folks sitting in the audience during the meetings. And if you,
that's right. So we've got
you can
4 members of the public, 1 member of the press, and 3 members of the general public in attendance at this point. It's worth noting, if you can see that list of attendees, that we are now masking all phone numbers. When we did our initial test, we were not as facile with the software as we are now, and all phone numbers are being masked so we don't publish anyone's phone number inadvertently. The view that most folks are seeing who are panelists is identical to what you've seen before, more or less. But for the attendees who are not panelists, they're not going to show up with video. You're not going to see those folks appear on your screen as one of the Brady Bunch tiles. You're only going to see folks who've been elevated or promoted to the position of panelist. This is one of the ways that Zoom controls the meeting, is panelists have greater authority, I suppose is an appropriate way to say it, to publish their images and their screens to the meeting. Attendees cannot publish their video. They cannot publish from their desktop. They can only listen and watch the meeting until they're invited to participate. At that point, they can be heard, though not seen typically. And if they need to be seen, share information from their computers, they need to be elevated to the panelist status that everyone on the screen here currently has been given. We've run a couple of meetings over the last couple of days. In fact, the TRC did actual business using Zoom this morning. And you know, our experience has been that it's good, but there's a couple of habits that we've noticed that we need to adopt in order to be as effective in this environment as we are in real life. The biggest one is panelists see everybody on the screen, and it's easy to imagine that everybody is seeing everything. But a number of people calling in, even now, you'll notice that of the 4 folks who've called in, 2 of them are on phone. So they're not seeing anybody, they're not seeing anything on a screen. They're simply hearing the voices. So it's really important as we go through the meeting for everyone to, and Amy Goins made this point last time, it's really important for everyone to be identified, whether that's done by the chair in acknowledging that a member is going to speak, or acknowledging that a member of staff is going to speak, or by the member themselves. We just need to make sure that the public is able to follow the conversation, not seeing who's speaking. So that's one big thing. The other thing that we've noticed, and this is an experience Kayla had with her meeting this morning, one of the participants, one of the panelists was dropped during the call. And she had no way of knowing that. So we need to figure out how to make sure we've got a safeguard against losing a member of the council and not knowing that they've lost. It may look like they're simply sitting really still when in fact, all we've got is a still image, but they are no longer connected to the meeting. In fact, no, it's sometimes hard to keep track of where the tiles are. But what we're suggesting is that if any member of council during any meeting is dropped and you recognize that you're dropped because you're not hearing the meeting anymore, send an email to Colleen so that she can inform the chair, the council president, that a member has been dropped, and we will wait for you to reestablish your connection to the meeting before continuing.
Rob,
Yes.
excuse me, Amy Goins, Assistant Solicitor. What if a member of the council loses internet service at their home and so they're unable to send an email? How would they then notify Colleen or anyone else of the issue?
So if they've lost complete connection, they can call into the meeting. At that point, we're not necessarily going to know, but they still have an action they can take. They can dial into the meeting and get back in. At that point, a member who's dropped out of the conversation would have to let the chairman know that they've been out of the meeting for the last 5 minutes and ask for a recap of what's been said since then. And the same is true in a sense for members of the public who are participating during a public hearing or during a public comment period. If they're dropped, Kayla, I'm going to actually let you walk through your experience today with a dropped audio. You had 2 members of the public who dialed in who had difficulty. So I'm going to let you walk through the process you had to go through to get folks back into the meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. So like what Rob was describing, when we were in the TRC this morning, we had a couple of applicants who their audio wasn't working for whatever reason. I mean, we're all learning right now that it's the technology on the platform, but it's also the technology in your home. And so on that account, we had a couple of applicants who appeared to be in the platform online through the computer audio, but when we called their application, invited them to speak, it was clear they weren't able to. When we couldn't hear them, what we did then was we stepped them through some quick steps to live time troubleshoot. The thought being, we're all there, we're all working to get the meeting done, and we just needed to pause, take maybe 2 minutes of time to figure out what was going wrong and how to straighten that out with them. And so we stepped through with them kind of the actions they needed to take to check. And so the first thing we did was communicate very clearly to them. We've unmuted you on our side, but we are still unable to hear you. It seems as though there's an audio challenge on your side. And so then we described to them how they would find their mute controls on the platform, because we knew they were all in the room electronically. We could see their faces. We knew they were still present in the meeting. And so we described to them how to bring their cursor to the bottom of their screen, see that pop-up come up at the bottom that gives their control for their mute and their ways to interact in the meeting. We described to them to check and make sure that they were unmuted there. Also check and make sure any other things on their computer that might be muting their microphone were set up to absorb audio. That didn't fix it either time for us. So then we had to go to sort of tier 2 on what you could do to fix this. And we described to them how to use the pop-up or drop-down menu beside your mute control in Zoom when you're an attendee to change your audio setting. Basically, if we could not make their computer audio work, we asked them to then use that sort of drop-down. And now is actually a fine and good time for people to kind of follow along and get familiar with that process themselves. Going down, clicking on that, we call them all drop downs, but in this case, it's on the bottom, so it's really a pop-up. And then looking in there to say you can switch your audio type. And so switching from your computer microphone to that dial-in number and reminding people there is a key code that'll pop up and tell you what you need to type in to enter the meeting ID and whatnot. And then we just took a little bit of a pause and we said, okay, we'll give you about a minute now to see if that can work. And then if that doesn't work, we'll go to tier 3. That worked for everybody. The sort of tier 3 option is leave the Zoom room completely and come back in and see if that straightens it out. Potentially it's just glitchy on a very overworked platform these days. So that was sort of tier 3, but we also sort of knew that there's a scenario where maybe they don't come through at even our sort of third final way to troubleshoot live time with them. And that's a piece that the council particularly should give some thought to how they want to do that. If you really cannot hear the person speaking, it's really important to know. I mean, we all know that's fundamental to these meetings working. And so if you can't hear somebody, they've tried to come back in every way you know to how to troubleshoot them. It's important to kind of figure out what you do then to say, do we functionally stop this topic until we can hear from people and pick it up at a later time, or how you want to handle that. But really my experience, we were able to live time troubleshoot with those members of the public who were there, those applicants, and we got things back in working order, only losing probably 5 or so minutes to straightening out the technology.
And really, I think that is a key thing for us to keep in mind. We just have to be patient. These silly, mute, unmute problems, these issues where we've got just a technical problem that's got to be worked through. Just working it nice and slow and letting folks work through the technology. It takes a little longer, but if we're patient, we get through it a lot easier and with a lot less frustration. And ultimately, I think it makes things go more quickly. The technology isn't perfect, and we've got to just sort of acknowledge that, be willing to work with it, and let folks be uncomfortable and just work through that with them. The last thing you want is for folks who are having technical difficulty on their end to feel like they're being rushed, because then they're gonna start moving things that aren't going to help, and it's not going to actually resolve itself quickly. It's going to take longer.
Rob, I wonder if, again, this is Amy Goins. I wonder if what Kayla just explained, the different methods of troubleshooting, could be appended to the instructions that are on the agenda for accessing the meeting and protocol. That way, members of the public know what to do if, their own audio drops.
So can I just jump in? It's Colleen Camp. So one of the things that we thought of, Amy, was adding that instructions to that, and also letting folks know that they can test their microphone and their speakers beforehand or when they get to the meeting, using that same pop-up that Kayla was talking about. They can test them. So I noticed, I think we talked about the folks in the TRC meeting this morning. One person that had that issue could check the microphone, and you could do that in advance. So that way, if your computer has video, but you don't have a microphone, then you're able to call in advance so that you know, as opposed to waiting till you're trying to speak. I think that worked well for you guys, Kayla, right? When he tested his system. So it's something that we could add to the instruction sheet. And also, if there's a waiting room when the attendees are waiting for the meeting to begin, I think we can add that. We can work on that on the back end for sure. That's a great idea. Thanks.
Thanks, Colleen. This is Abel. I just saw a comment on the Q&A from Jamie Murdoch saying many of the same things, but perhaps in particular, if we know that somebody's going to be presenting to us, if they could in advance be sent a link to the Zoom testing, app, they can go there and just make sure that their computer's working.
That's a good idea.
It is. So I've got another issue. Terry, you had the ghosting problem with the background before, and you fixed that. How did you fix that?
Truthfully, I have no idea.
Okay.
I was in the guild at the time, and it may have been the stone building, but I really don't know maybe it was just, how many people? We had over 50 people on that particular call, didn't we? Was that the test
We
call?
did, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So Rob, I think I was having that problem. That's why I switched back to my regular background.
Right.
Each time and it could be, it said something about a green screen, and it could be the fact that I don't have a solid background behind me. Could be the issue. So
I do think that the complexity of the background, the actual background you're sitting in front of, does make a difference.
So it's Debbie. I logged on early because I couldn't get my background, my virtual background to work a little earlier in the day. So I said, maybe I have to be in the meeting to get it to work. And when I first imported the background, I was sitting against a very busy home scenario and it didn't work at all. I turned my computer to a blank wall and it's working. So it is, you have to have, I had to have it in front of a blank wall to make it work.
Could you, sorry, this is Abel. Deb, could you send that background to all of us, or has it already been sent to us? I love it.
It's the
great.
background that Rob sent to us the other day. It was a picture inside of an email. It wasn't an attachment. The picture was just there. I
Yeah,
saved the picture.
the subject line was background for council.
Okay, I was looking through my emails, didn't see it.
We can resend it, not a problem.
Abel, you've actually got a great background with the birds and the ocean.
I like it, but I don't know if, for the meeting if it'll work.
Looks good on you.
You know, it actually says that it works best with a green screen behind you. So that's kind of crazy, but there's not many of us have a green screen.
Right.
Rob, may I bring up the issue of Zoom bombing again?
Yes, please.
Because last night, a municipal committee meeting was disrupted by Zoom bombing. I believe it may have actually been teenagers from the community calling in, I guess with some time on their hands, but they interrupted the meeting with, I believe, racist, sexist comments. What abilities does our system have built in to protect against that kind of abuse? And I wonder if we should, develop a written protocol for responding to those kind of incidents.
Yeah, so we've taken every precaution that Zoom has recommended. We've done all of the settings that Zoom recommends to avoid Zoom bombing. Having it in the webinar as opposed to a meeting also means that participants who are not panelists don't have the right to publish from their camera, and they can't share from their screen. So since we're not allowing audio from anyone other than panelists until we say it's their turn to speak, and since we're not allowing video or screen sharing, we think we're in pretty safe territory.
So it really will be handled like it would at a regular council meeting. If somebody started making inappropriate statements during public comment, we would just shut off their mic.
We certainly have the capacity to do it. And, the council president is the chair of the committee, and he, decides what is a breach of decorum. And if he says there's a breach, we shut him down.
Got it.
So this is Abel. Would I direct somebody to do that, or will I actually have the ability to mute somebody?
So you should, as a panelist, have the ability to mute. Colleen, correct me if I'm wrong there. Abel, why don't you try to mute me at this point?
Right, or me.
You should have that ability.
So you hover over Rob's screen and it should pop up with mute and then the three little dots.
I don't see it on our end.
You don't see that?
No.
So then I think we have to make you all co-hosts to
do that.
So if I do that right now with Abel,
Colleen, I can see the mute button when I hover over anybody's screen, and I'm not a co-host at
No.
this point.
You are a co-host
Oh,
tonight.
you made me a co-host tonight?
Oh, we did, of course.
Well,
So
then
Abel,
I'm powerful.
so,
Oh,
so,
yeah, I can see it.
okay. So then we should do that with the 5 council members, Rob, and the solicitor and you and the clerk.
Certainly the chair should have the ability to turn off a mic. And it's up to the council how they want to handle all other things. I mean, you know, if everybody should have that ability, that's up to you guys.
Just let me know and what we need to do for sure.
And any thoughts from rest of the council?
I think the only issue with that is if you hypothetically are knocked off at a certain point while this is happening, then someone else, just either someone that works for the town needs the ability to do it right away to shut someone off.
Right, a malicious.
I would be a co-host
So-
and be able to shut someone off.
Okay.
So the host of the meeting is in the background, so to speak. So more of technical, could be, doesn't have to be, but could be, so that we can provide assistance to you all, right? So we could, we would make a couple of people. Rob, it would be a co-host. The thought in the regular meeting would be Rob, Susan would have that ability. It just allows staff to be able to assist the council when needed. So if someone did get dropped off, there is always another co-host.
So panelists can share from their screen and can share information, correct?
Yeah, currently I think I can share.
Okay.
Panelists can share, yes.
Really, that is the main thing the main functionality that I think staff is going to need. Whether the actual control of the meeting, we don't necessarily need, other than to assist the council and the council president. But the ability to share is something that we have to be able to do. We have to be able to show the PowerPoint presentation or the document that we're talking about, that kind of thing.
This is Kayla Gray. Wondering, did you all want to try and see what it looks like to share a document to get familiar with that? I'm not sure if you guys have had the opportunity to see what that looks like, but if you wanted to, that's something we could also do right now is
Yep.
share a mock document of something. And
So I've
So
got
I have a
PowerPoint-
file. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, good. Go ahead,
I got a
Rob.
PowerPoint that I was going to do if you'd like to see how that looks on the screen. All right, so I'm gonna share my desktop. And
So Rob, there's a way that folks can split their screen too, but I don't remember how to do it. So that you can see the participants on one side and then see the presentation at the same time.
You should be seeing that right now, Brian. Is that,
Well, right now I see it where I have I can see most of the presentation, but I have 4 cameras on the right-hand side. That cover
Okay.
Part of the.
Just use the
presentation.
drop down. Brian, at the top of that Ford strip, the strip.
Oh, view options, okay.
See it?
right,
so,
Side-by-side mode is what you want.
yes.
so this is just a PowerPoint slide, sort of organizing our thoughts about what the aftermath of COVID-19, how to begin to analyze the impacts of COVID-19 as we go forward, just sort of thinking through, what is it that we know? What data do we have? What are we missing? What do we know that we need that we don't have? And where are the places where we might start looking for information? This is a very high level graphic, but start filling this out. Unemployment claims are up. The value of negotiable equities obviously are down. Just sort of beginning to puzzle through. And I am now going to stop sharing.
There's another interesting feature. If it's okay with you all, I'm just going to point out the interesting features as they come up because we were playing with some of them at the TRC this morning and might as well share on what we've experienced. When somebody is screen sharing, the view option or whatever that title was, Deb, you had pointed out there. In that drop down, there's a feature called annotate. And if you use that, you can actually use a pointer, you can highlight things on Rob's PowerPoint. So if you were looking at it and saying, Rob, I'm a little confused about these unknown unknowns, particularly this one, you can actually visually highlight that thing that's becoming confusing. You know, it's a weird example because it's just a list in a chart, but if you were looking at something that's complicated, or if you're looking at, say, a budget document with many, many lines in it and you want to draw attention to something, you can actually do that as like a visual pointer. And there are some tools in there that are helpful, honestly, to help people see what you're trying to draw attention to.
Does the council want to see that? Because Kayla, I have a file here we could share and then we could show them if you're interested.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
So if we, bear with me for a moment, let's see. So this was the email that Rob sent to the council earlier today with your some thoughts for tonight. So you all should see that. And then, so the annotate, I believe at the top of your screen should be a bar and one of the buttons says annotate. Do you see that, Abel? Do you have that?
Yeah, I just drew that line underneath there. Does everybody see that then?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So there's something called Spotlight. Oh yeah, Rob's doing it, everyone. So let's just say we wanted to stop that share. So I think that one at a time would, right, Rob, you would sort of need to spotlight something if you wanted to explain it to the council, or you could scroll through it. Maybe when you have your the agenda up, when we usually put the agenda up during the meetings, if that's something that you want to do.
Yeah, so this is an interesting feature. So you can highlight things, you can, get folks talking about a particular part of a document, a particular, this is probably more interesting when you're dealing with photographs or maps or something like that, but it's an interesting feature.
Are only hosts and like the webinar folks allowed to draw on it, or is that for everybody?
So it's panelists and hosts, correct?
Right, so Abel, if I were to pull that back up again, share that again, you should, do you see that you can annotate? Do you see that you can?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, if, say we had a, like a participant in the meeting who wanted to comment on a specific part of a document that we brought up, and they wanted to highlight it somehow. Would they be able to do that, or is it only, us hosts?
So they could. Kayla, I don't know if you want to speak to that because you all had that today with TRC, where you had your applicants with plans.
Yeah, you know what? My quick answer, and it's my really honest one, is I'm not positive. Because we in the TRC meeting, we didn't have like attendees there. We just had the applicants, and so they all had panelist permission. So I didn't have the opportunity to see whether if you're an attendee, you can annotate. My feeling on it is likely not, because
I don't think so. But my thought for the council meetings would be that so if you had an applicant in a public hearing, maybe Abel, that needed to show something, they would pull it up. We would pull in if they were just an attendee, if they're an invited guest, if you want to call them that, like folks that need to participate in the meeting, some that you want to call up to the podium to speak. If they are an attendee, we can pull them in. It takes a half a second. They can then come to the podium, your virtual podium. Then they can screen share, and you have the ability to stop them from sharing if you need to, but certainly they do have that ability to share. So we're thinking that folks for public hearings, probably for the most part, would be public hearings and I guess comments from interested citizens. If you're going to pull them into the podium, if someone else wants to speak, they wouldn't necessarily be sharing, but we could pull them in from attendee to a panelist so that then they would be on video, you would see them and they would be able to interact with you a little more.
But Colleen, the easiest way to handle it all would be to strongly urge applicants, presenters, and members of the public to submit written documents in advance.
So I think that they usually do that, and we were having that conversation and we were saying that we really don't find people coming to the council, for the council anyway, meetings, wanting to hand documents in. Sometimes the clerk has them, but if, say you had a public hearing for a liquor license and I don't know, they came in and they said, oh, we have our certificate of good standing or some paperwork that needed to be handed in, the council president would ask them, if you're in a regular meeting in person, the council president would ask them to hand it to the clerk for the record, right? So in a virtual meeting, they could send the email and then the clerk could receive it.
Mhm.
But, Amy, everything should be submitted in advance for sure.
Right, we have to allow someone to do it during the meeting, but we can certainly express the strong preference. Please get documents to us before the meeting.
Right. So with regard to the technology and the settings that we've got, Jamie Murdoch points out that attendees currently only have the ability to raise their hand or ask a question through the Q&A feature. They can't edit documents. They're not going to be able to broadcast. Again, this is part of that Zoom bombing settings strategy that Zoom is recommending. In order for someone who comes to public comment period, for example, and says, now I'd like to pull up the budget and point out sections of the budget that I think you should be focused on, we'd have to elevate them from attendee to panelist and then let them bring their documents in from their own computer or what have you. It's probably the right way to do it because then you don't have a Zoom bomber. You have somebody who literally, engaging in fraudulent representation to get there. They're engaging the council and saying, I want to present something useful to the public. And that is a misrepresentation of what they're doing. They're not just kids goofing off. It's somebody maliciously disrupting a meeting at that point.
And of course, I don't think there's much we can do about the fact that the platform allows for much greater functionality on a computer versus on the phone. I think we can explain in the written instructions how to, I think there is an ability to raise your hand when you're just on the phone, correct?
Yes.
And I wonder if there's a little bit that we can do in the way of publicizing resources that may be available. For instance, I've heard that some of the telecom companies may be offering free internet service. I don't know what we can do about someone who doesn't have a laptop or a computer, but perhaps there's something we can do in the way of publicizing those resources that may be available.
So there is a Zoom app for smartphones, and I've in fact joined one of these meetings by smartphone recently. It's not too bad. I mean, it's not as crisp. It's it's a smaller screen, but it's a perfectly functional application. So for folks who've got only a cellular connection, but they've got a smartphone, they can participate with all of the features that you'd have if you were sitting in front of a laptop.
Right, and it's free to download on their phones as well.
So Amy, that's a good idea. If you all want us to do that, we could include that in the instructions.
So on the raising hands by phone, that is something we should all be very familiar with. Is that the *6 feature? How does someone raise their hand by phone?
So if you're an attendee, you mean, Rob?
Yes.
Okay, so I believe they do *9 if it's just on the phone. If it's someone you could have an attendee in the public that's participating through the Zoom link. There's a feature that they just click raise hand, but if you're on your telephone,
Yep.
we believe it's *9. Kayla is,
*6, I think *6 is the unmute, right?
so
Yeah.
star
That's right.
6 is mute and unmute,
Right.
but if you're on the phone and you want to be recognized, then you would *9. The little hand icon shows up and all of the panelists would be able to see. One, they would see that an attendee has raised their hand, and then when the council president's ready to recognize them, we can allow them to speak. If you wanted, we could test that now,
Yeah,
or,
I think there are 4 or 5, 3, I think 3 people on the phone.
so it's an
Jessica by phone.
So if we have an attendee that wants to help us out maybe and raise their hand, let's see if that works, if someone's calling in. So someone, so
Someone raised their hand.
Abel, you see that?
I can see that.
And then we can, so let's see, we can unmute and allow them to talk. We can unmute them.
I just unmuted him.
Okay.
This is Wayne.
All right.
Hello, Wayne. Okay, so that should work. It is, you just got to keep your eyes open because there's the panelists and the attendees. They're sort of on a different screen there, but
Right.
Their
and-
tab, you click back and forth. Well, we were thinking for your council meetings, your regular meetings, they're pretty controlled, right? The only times that folks can speak would be when you have a public hearing and you call them up, and then comments from interested citizens. So it would be at that point. And if we have a lot of people on the attendee list, or even the panelist list, because the panelists could raise their hand to speak as well. It seems that when you do raise your hand to speak, you kind of go up in the list, or you go to the top of the list. So you're able to kind of, you don't have to keep scrolling through hundreds of names, right?
right.
But those are the two key things, right? For phones, we need to remember *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself.
And so maybe that's something good at the beginning of the meeting to give some instructions if the council president wants to do that at the beginning of the meeting.
I think it would be a great idea to have it appended to all the agendas, and also to briefly reiterate it at the beginning of every meeting.
Okay.
And because I am incredibly over the top on these things, I would even say when you get to the public comment periods, it's worth repeating it then too, right?
Sure.
If somebody didn't sign it in at 7 and you're now at public comment at 8:45,
Right.
it doesn't hurt you to do it again. It's 15 more seconds of your time, but it's the difference of them knowing how to participate or not.
Easily done.
Hi, Rob, this is Lori Fox. We did put that information in the waiting room as well. So when attendees join the waiting room, if they're there a few minutes before the council starts, the *9, the *6 is there, and it was also in the agenda. I did see that earlier today.
Yeah. Thanks, Lori.
Jamie's sent a QA in letting us know that in this platform, phone callers will not be able to mute and unmute themselves. We're going to have to do that. Now, I suppose that's correct. In this platform, they're not going to be able to mute or unmute themselves. We have to be aware of the fact that there is a hard mute, unmute on many phones, but that's not related to this platform.
So then, yes, it becomes very important for us to remember to reiterate that and ensure that a phone caller has the ability to raise their hand, and ensure that the hosts or whoever's watching that, just so that anybody, just as somebody could jump up from the, seat in council chamber and raise an issue of procedure, somebody in theory can do that in this format.
I'd also suggest that it makes sense for us to sort of develop a way of elevating folks to panelists temporarily during the meeting in case, particularly during the budget hearing, in case someone wants to present a graphic or present something that they've written. If Mr. Beasley comes in with, a graphic that he would otherwise hand to the council, which is quite common. There's quite often handouts that are given to the council by panelists. I think we have the ability, we just need to get used to elevating from attendee to panelist for that purpose. We're going to have to be able to do that fairly quickly, I think.
We could make them from an attendee to a panelist easily and quickly. If we then take them from a panelist and put them back in the audience, right? They're done speaking at the podium. They want to go back to their seat as a public member. I think that on our back end, Rob, we will have to look at that. We don't want to drop anyone from a meeting by
That's right.
back. So we will make sure that we look at that tomorrow. If it's easy it makes sense, it would be great to be able to pull them in, let them speak like they're at the podium, and then walk back to their seat. We get the next person. So we will look at that tomorrow for sure.
So go ahead, demote me to attendee. And let's see if we can bring me in and out of the panelists' view.
All right, so let's see what I do with you. I think first I have to withdraw your co-host permission.
Okay.
For a panelist. And let's see, we should be able to, anyone want to help me out here? I don't see.
Yeah.
We'll have to look at that tomorrow.
We'll have to work it out.
Back and forth.
Hold on, I have a mute problem, but I can do it. So I will do it on my end.
Yeah, what was it how do you do that?
When I'm on, I got all excited and I was talking and then I realized no one was hearing me. So I think Rob is
gone.
So Rob's an attendee now. This is Lori Fox. I just switched him and he raised his hand. So I'm going to allow him to speak.
How did you make him an attendee, Lori?
So when you have the participant view up on the right-hand side, under panelists, I just basically hovered over him, and then there's the more option, and you can make him an attendee. And I'm assuming that I can promote him back to a panelist.
You can.
So now he's been moved back into, there he is, Rob's back with us. So we were able to make you an attendee, Rob, and then bring you back. We saw that you raised your hand. And
okay, good.
So it is actually a really weird experience, to be honest with you, because you get dropped out and you're in sort of Neverland for a bit, and it was a very interesting experience.
So that's good to know that we can do that for the council, bring in someone who wants to speak when it's their turn, and then they can go back to the audience. Okay.
So the thing to make it less disconcerting for anyone who isn't just playing around with the software, the messages I received both coming in and going out are now being rejoined to your meeting. And I was being rejoined as an attendee, and then I was being rejoined as a panelist coming back. If you're not expecting it, it looks like your screen's gone dead and you don't have a good sense of what's going on. So I do think it's important to let folks know. We're now going to elevate you. You'll receive a message letting you know that you're rejoining the meeting.
Okay, good to know.
And this is Lori Fox again. Jamie Murdoch just made a comment in the Q&A that if we're going to be switching an attendee over to a panelist for sharing information, that maybe we want to have some sort of cheat sheet for them so that they know how to do that and share the document. The only thing I will mention as well is that if you decide to pull people in so that they can share their screen, you could potentially open it up to a Zoom bombing at that point if someone is, misrepresenting themselves to the council at that point. So just want to throw that out there.
Right, because as an attendee, couldn't you type in whatever name you want?
Yes, you can rename yourself, absolutely. One thing, it's Colleen again, if we have an attendee for the council that if the president recognizes someone to speak, we can keep them as an attendee and allow them to speak. You just won't see if they are on a Zoom platform and they're on the video, you just won't see them. You'll just hear them. But we can do that if the council prefers to have attendees.
Why don't we allow people to speak first, and then if they need to present a document at that point, we can give them access as a panelist.
Yep, whatever the council wants to do.
Yeah, it seems reasonable. I mean,
There are some people that don't like the fact that you can't see everyone, but I do think this is the safest way to do it.
Yeah.
So would you like to try allowing a panel, allow an attendee to talk?
Well, we did that with Wayne, right?
Wayne, we did do that with Wayne, and he stayed in attendee status.
But without video, right? We did it. So are you thinking of trying to do it with video?
No, Abel was right. We had Wayne speak. We kept him as an attendee, so you can do that if you prefer to do that.
all right. So you now have about 7 members of the public in the meeting. It's a work session. You're free to do whatever you'd like, but if you want to open it up to the public, it might be a good opportunity to do that now.
Sure. We've gone over everything basically at this point then.
Rob, can I jump? Do you want to add one more thing about the regular sessions when the council does the pledge, Rob? Did you want to talk about that?
Yes, that is an important point. Jamie Murdoch has pointed out that there's some latency in all of our connections. So if we all try to recite the Pledge of Allegiance together, it's going to get messy. It's going to be multiple folks speaking at different rates, and it's not going to work well. So what we've recommended is that at the beginning of the meeting, when you would normally do the pledge, we simply publish an image of the flag from council chambers, and one member of council or whoever you'd like to designate make the pledge, but one voice, not multiple voices.
So you have to make sure everyone else is on mute, right?
You have to let folks know that they should not be joining in because of the latency problem. Yeah. So, it could be a member of council. This certainly would be an appropriate thing for the town clerk to do. But one voice is probably the best we're going to do. Unless you want to try it. I mean, Jamie has seen this sort of problem before. It doesn't mean that it is necessarily always going to be a problem for us. But if you'd like to try it, I'm game for trying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I don't know. Sue, would you feel comfortable as the clerk doing it?
If that's what you would like to have, that would be fine.
Well, that was not a resounding yes.
I can do that.
I feel like that's the apolitical way to do it. I don't really know. Anybody else have any thoughts?
I just have some concern when we all stand up now, we're going to have pictures of our midsections, right? I think the whole thing is odd. I think perhaps just one person should recite it, because if we, I'm not going to recite the Pledge of Allegiance sitting down. That feels disrespectful somehow. Just all of us stand up. It's just an odd view.
Yep.
That's a good point, Deb.
Yes, it is.
So this is Lori Fox, Councilwoman Kelso. What you could do, and I don't know if you can see what I just did, I clicked the stop video. So right now it just shows my profile picture and my name.
Right.
And I could get up, stand during the pledge, and then when I'm done, I'll click start video and it'll go back to my picture. So that way we can still stand and be respectful, but not be looking at people's, midsections and stomachs.
Perfect solution. Perfect solution.
Lori, how'd you get the static picture on there?
So you click the,
So when you set up, when you set up your profile in Zoom, you can upload a picture.
Oh, so Laura,
So when you
I have
stop,
and if you don't have a picture and you click stop video, it just shows
it
your
just,
name.
Just shows your name.
yeah.
That's it,
Like
which is
Google.
fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Lori, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
On my business laptop, I have the app installed, and I'm able to go in and join the meeting that way, and my profile goes with me. But when I try to do it with the way that we get the invite from the town, it automatically defaults to going to the web platform, and it doesn't give me an opportunity to log in. I haven't been able to do it. So I can't change like my profile picture, I think, in this case.
Say that one more time, Brian. Sorry.
I'm sorry. So when I use the actual Zoom app on a laptop, I have no problem when I logging in. When I get the actual email from the town, there's a link that I click on,
Right.
and it automatically brings you to a web page, which then you hit run and it logs you in to the. But I think it puts us in as guest, but I'm not sure. So it's not like I'm logging in as me because it knows it's me by the name, I guess. But for some reason, there's no option that I know of where I can go in and change my profile.
So we sent the invite to the council as a panelist. So you should have received an invitation that way because that's your link to get in.
I did.
Okay.
That worked, but I'm not logging in as my own person, if that makes sense. Like, I can go on Zoom without the town and
Right.
log in, and it's it's my name, it's my picture, it's my profile. When I try to log in the way that I was invited today,
Right.
I don't believe. But Laura, you did it, right? So how did you do it?
Well, I'm using my town email and my town account, but I think what would work for you, Councilman, is rather than using the link, you could go into your Zoom client, and then you would have to put the meeting ID in that way.
Right, but I don't.
We'd
think
have to try it. I'd want to make sure it worked for you.
Yeah, but I don't think the meeting ID wasn't in the email. I guess it was from what I recall, but I can check.
No, Brian, this is Kayla. I think what it is that when you get the invitation from to join this, when you get that email invitation, we've already input your name and your Bryant DeCruz at whatever email is used to correspond with you as a counselor.
Okay.
And so if your Zoom client through your business is through a different email address and you've built a profile under that.
So I just need to create another profile.
Yeah, I think if you created one under your whatever email you use as a counselor, that would actually follow through with you here. When you get that link in the email invite, it's your email address has been pre-populated for you. So it's defaulting to that account, I think might be what you're experiencing there.
Right.
I think that's exactly it. So we send it right now. We've been sending to towncouncil@southkingstonri.com. So that makes sense, Kayla. He'd have to set up a profile with that email address if that's what the council wants to do.
Okay, hang on a second. We did have somebody raise their hands in the attendees. Jocelyn, did you have something that you wanted to share? I'll unmute you. It's
Can
on
you
ice.
hear me?
Yes.
Hi
Yeah.
all. You're doing such a great job. You're really doing such a great job. Good work. I had put it up in the comments, putting up a picture of the static flag and not being able to see your face from the viewer's perspective is very disconnecting. And I think one of your major goals of working online, you do want to connect. So I almost think putting with Susan, having Susan have a small tabletop flag with her, you could direct folks' attention to it. Something like she would be the obvious choice. I think it's important to be connected to the people. So I had typed it into the comments, but I ended up putting my hand up, not sure which one you were going to see. And to Abel's comment, what do you see for me? Do you see Leska J or do you see Jocelyn Leska?
I see the Leska J. I just knew it was. you.
Okay, so I came in under my work account. So Bryant, there's your answer. If you come in under your work account, you're going to show up under your work account. I'm under my work account. And that's why you see Leska J rather than Jocelyn Leska.
Well, then I understand that. So I guess
Okay.
what I need to do is just on the town side, create another profile so that I
Right.
have
Right,
here
exactly.
up if I
Yeah.
want to at that point.
Yeah, but I just wanted to make the comment about the flag. It's incredibly disconnecting to put up a static photograph if your goal is to try to maintain some connectivity to the live people. So thank you kindly for recognizing me. And again, as I just going to repeat what I said earlier, I'm so proud of you. It is so nice to hear our town officials, to see you working and to be able in some way to be a part of this. So great job.
Thank you. All right. Any further things from panelists or? And if there are any other attendees on the line at the moment who have any comments, feel free to raise your hand now, see how that works.
So while I'm on, I was able to go into the Zoom on the web, and it just emailed me a profile that I can fix on my end for the town, to the town email address.
Good. All right, then I feel like this is gonna work out well. I'm sure we'll get there and we'll have some snafu hit, but we can all laugh at it in the future. You know, making the best of a tough situation. So thank you all for putting this together and spending the time to learn the platform and help us through it. And if there's no further comments, I'll just say that this meeting is over. Thank you all for coming.
Good night.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.